great friend. He's been like one of our best Great Lakes buddies for, oh, how many years have we been?
2005.
2005 at Green Bay. So now I'm going to be back to Green Bay for a reunion. And so even fortunate, Julie Kinselman and I were fortunate to go over and participate in one of the UK Bathing Beach conferences. It was very good. So what we're going to do is Calum's going to tell us a story. It's usually very entertaining, and we're looking forward to it. So here you go.
Okay, thank you very much, Shannon. And just what a pleasure it is to come back again and see so many faces and friends and people I've seen over the years. So I'd like to particularly thank Shannon for inviting me again. I'd also like to thank Holly for driving me up all the way from Chicago. Sounds great. And Michelle, she was riding shotgun and I was in the back seat of a government licensed vehicle with blackout windows, so I felt quite cool. So, Matt Damon came to mind, but that was just... Anyway, I hope you're enjoying your lunch. It was lovely. Carry on eating. I hope my accent, by now you've got used to it. It's a sort of Scottish Billy Connolly type Glaswegian. Anyway, so my topic is going to be about beach issues and politics, fun times in the UK. And the reason I picked that very topic was not to be too science, but basically we've had a really interesting year. And I have had a particularly interesting year. And all these words come to mind, and including the word politics for the first time. And there have been a few things happening in the UK, which I'm going to allude to as I'm talking. But also, just to say that this summer in particular, things were different for us in the UK, which I'm going to explain, in spite of the fact that what I call the European Bathing Water Directive has been coming along since 2008. And we've been preparing for it, sending messages, explaining. This summer was the first summer it was actually enforced across all the bathing waters in the UK. And surprise, surprise, the people suddenly woke up to what we had been saying since 2008. Anyway, so you'll see in a minute. So I thought of a theme for the talk. And for some reason, the circle of life came into my head. And basically, I see myself as the lion. No. I would like to. I'm probably more like the monkey in the middle. But also, if you just for a second look at all the different personality types in that cartoon, and trust me, I have experienced them all this summer, every single type of personality. So my thinking was really this sort of circle of the experiences of interacting with people in politics as well, as a bathing water EPA. So why has this happened this year? Well, so first thing that came out in the newspapers before the bathing season started, before we had introduced the summer and explained ourselves, the media got 2 weeks in front of us all. This is a national newspaper. So before we had our press release all ready to say welcome to a new summer of 2016 and all the good things that were going to be happening, the media got out 2 weeks early and started making stories. I've been warning about problems coming since 2008, that 2 weeks before we got the year to start, it started on the wrong message. A combination of truth, of course, but an element of misrepresentation and all sorts of problems that brings out 2 weeks before we were even ready to get going. So immediately the politicians start jumping up and down. First time that they actually all woke up to my local beach is a problem suddenly. And messages like warnings, don't swim here, beaches closed just before the summer's about to start, not a very positive way of starting the summer. And then we had another newspaper article who decided to say that never mind in the UK, but even in the UK, Scotland ourselves had the worst, dirtiest beaches in the whole of the European Union, all 28 member states, 22,000 bathing waters. I've got 84, and they're the worst in the EU. So, and I'm still here. So there's truth, but there's a lot of misrepresentation, and immediately that goes to my boss, the chairman, the chief exec, etc., and they're all on the phone. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Anyway, I need to digress just for a few moments and give you a bit of background to, for those of you that know, apologies, but for the rest, the European system is different in a few fundamental ways. Basically, the European Directive, which is the prime sort of background framework that all European countries have to work towards in terms of explaining whether a bathing water location is good or not so good. And it's basically taking the data from 4 seasons and putting that all together, producing percentile calculations which put your water location, your bathing water location, into one of 4 classification categories: excellent, good, sufficient, or poor. And that describes the overall condition and the normal status of these beach water locations. We use 2 key indicator parameters. There are other there are other requirements, criteria, but the main 2 fecal indicator organisms are the E. coli and the enterococci, which again we're all familiar with using as the key sort of environmental health, public risk drivers. And these tests then produce the 4 classifications. So remember, each location is described on the whole based on 4 years of monitoring, and that would roll forward on an annual basis. You would lose your oldest year, you'd bring in the newest year. So the other point that was new this year for the first time was that all locations were required by law to display at the beachfront these 4 water quality symbols. So, stars, 3, 2, 1, or just a blank if it's a poor. Interestingly, there's also a European symbol for when you have advice against bathing, and of course what was being picked up, the advice against bathing is really for when you know of an ongoing pollution incident or an ongoing problem, or if you wish to have a permanent warning against bathing at a location because you might want to close it down. But it's not actually used live all the time at a poor location. The newspapers gave the impression that basically a poor location meant you were permanently giving advice against bathing. So this gave one of these sort of misrepresentations and certainly a bit of mileage. So how have we done this summer? Because I've literally just escaped the UK just as we announced our results. I had to do, the end of season is the 15th of September, and we did the press release stuff on the Friday the 30th, and I flew away out the way. I had to do Friday's message and radio interviews and newspaper, but I've avoided all the follow-ons, so I'm here hiding. But basically, our results, in Scotland we have 84 of these official designated locations, and this year, as will be applied next summer, we will have 12 at poor. Now, bearing in mind at the start of the summer we had 17, so we're moving in the right direction, and we have a lot of information as to why we're getting better at some locations and which ones we've still to do more. But that just to give a flavour of the sort of background to what was about to happen. We also have a very useful tool, or I particularly have a very useful, powerful tool, probably fairly uniquely, folks, because we run it live as an environment agency. We have these electronic message board signs at our control, literally in more or less the same floor of the same building I work at. And these on the beach electronic message signs provide the tool for on-the-day water quality information messages. So remember what we said, that a basic description symbol gives you the overall quality classification based on all the data for the last 4 years. But we also have this facility to give people on-the-day information. If we know, even at an excellent bathing water, that there's a short-term problem, we can post a one-day advisory based on live link to these electronic messages. So it's an integrated live signage system, which is very powerful to me and a very useful operational tool, and works within the general sort of principles of World Health Organization, prediction and protect, give the information to the public at the time that they've got people visiting the beach. So this is my only sort of complicated slide, so don't worry. It's not that complicated either. Basically, this is the data set from one of our 12 poor bathing water locations based on this year's results. So you've got the E. coli and you've got the intestinal enterococci. Now, at this location, the driver for the water quality class is the enterococci. So actually, the E. coli, once it's summed together and the percentile, not summed, but put together and the percentile calculation is produced, the classification boundary between the E. coli being a problem and not is well within the sufficient safe calculation. So it's the enterococci that's the actual problem. That's the crosses, the small crosses. And of course, you can see that really we're talking about a problem that arose in older years. So as we progress at this location, things will be getting better because the last few years we've already been enacting improvement programs. But that did not help explaining to the local town, and in particular the local politicians, both at a council and a national politics level. This town was shocked to discover that they had a poor water quality classification and a symbol that said perhaps occasionally bathing not advised, because up until 2016 they thought that they had previously had blue flag awards and had previous individual water quality criteria that said we're an excellent location in their heads. We've been telling for a few years that you've got a problem coming along here, and we told the Cabinet Secretary, who happens to be the local MP. A Cabinet Secretary in Scotland is just under the First Minister, Prime Minister level, in other words, big gun, and it was his constituency and his voters that were coming to his surgery 2 weeks before the start of the bathing season saying, what's this newspaper article, why is my town is very important, and it is a beautiful town, lovely beaches, but unfortunately right beside a major river system that just discharges straight beside the beach. But hey, we know about that sort of stuff. But they didn't quite get it, and when they did get it, they wanted to see what's happening, what's going to be done about it. So back to the circle of life and all our people that interact with my problem. So within days of this message coming out, we formed a local, well, it wasn't a local community, a community action group, and stakeholders got involved, local politicians, business representatives, tourism representatives, and a group called Concerned Residents. They're an interesting bunch. So of course, very agitated, very upset, and I think we've all experienced things like that. You go into these meetings and they're really looking for who they can blame. It's always someone else, or it's a utility, or it's a company, or it's something that they say, it's always their fault. So you have to spend a lot of time sort of trying to get the message across, explain the science, explain the problems and what's been done about it and what more should be done about it. This particular location it basically went way up to the top in terms of both wheels within wheels and in government levels, national government groups, local councillors getting involved. We had 4 councillors for this particular town, and of course they come from 3 different political parties. So guess what? Each one thinks they're the ones that's going to fix the problem and they're going to be the top dog. They're going to be the lion in the circle of life. Nightmare. Good fun, but absolute. Because you see people interacting and playing games with each other, and it was, well, it still is fun. But of course, at that level, then it comes back at me from the top also. So my chief executive, our directors of the water company are coming at us saying, what are you doing about it? What's happening? Why is this a problem? Blah, 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 blah. Basically, the circle of life. And for the first time, I think I said in my slide about my electronic signs, we've got 30 locations of beaches with these electronic signs, and they've been running for 14 years. And yet this location, for the first time ever, they came at it with a negative attitude. Why are you telling us with this fancy electronic sign that this is a bad location and we shouldn't go swimming today? You're basically giving bad message signals to our economy and blah. And I'm, whoa, okay. So they wanted the sign taken away. And the signs are there to make for the benefit of the improvement programs and to give better chance of the water quality classifications, coming up. It's basically a safety blanket in the European classification system. It gives you the ability to, when you have very heavy rainfall, to basically give a short-term advisory against bathing. As makes sense. Anyway, their attitude was extremely negative. But we had to work at that. And the final part of the equation, which I've not experienced before, but we know, beware, we're in a digital age. We're in a very fast media digital age. We were going to meetings where the concerned residents group were tweeting, or I call it twitting. They were tweeting as you were speaking. That's really scary because just what words come out of your mouth, you don't get a chance to moderate or explain, and before you know it, bang, it's gone out. There's also, there was in this community, quite an affluent community, I have to say, so they were very astute and they had quite a dynamic local website which used for all sorts of issues, football games and problems with vandalism, but then they would also put the story about, oh, by the way, I never really said this, but it's always SEPA. We are the lead, we are the ones causing this problem. You didn't tell us about it. What are you doing about it? You're the regulator, you're supposed to fix this here. So we were getting this live negative messaging. However, it's work in progress. We have now actually had about 4 meetings of this stakeholder group, and it's fair to say we've turned it around a bit. We've got a much more shared sort of community involvement, awareness of what everyone can do to improve the problem. We've also got a chairperson who's quite challenging to begin with, but basically he was a retired diplomat, and he announced himself as a civil servant. I went on the internet to Google and check him out. Yeah, he was a former ambassador from the UK to Algeria, had served all over the Middle East and in narcotics in the far sort of Hong Kong and Singapore. I'm like, whoops, this guy's top level stuff. But again, basically, once you got that key person on board and he understands the problem, he's now really taking on the task of sharing and bringing the local community residents in. So again, some things, once you get around the problems and explain it all, you can bring people on board. Oh yes, so what's been happening this summer? So, well, I don't know if you've heard about this, but On the 24th of June, my money disappeared. No. Yeah, we had Brexit, which I says, so everything I've said up till now, you're now going to say to me, so, because it doesn't matter, does it? Well, it sort of still does, yeah. But straight away, we were getting articles like this in BBC. So quite sensibly, the NGOs and the protest groups were saying, so how's this going to affect our beaches? Are they going to get worse after leaving the European Union, the European system and the methodologies and the drivers that gave us? It's fair to say that it's too early to say yet. That's the official line I've been given. I've been told to say this before, not to you guys, but actually at meetings. Negotiations that started. It's going to be 2 years before the actual detail comes out of the divorce negotiations. But joking apart, basically we've already had internal UK policy type meetings, and really from day one, day two won't be any different. There's the overall, for us in the bathing water public protection field, the drivers, World Health Organization standards, folks here are helping as well. The way everyone uses fecal indicators to provide water quality information, that stuff's based on sound science and will remain. And there is no intention at the moment to make any change to existing legislation apart from possibly just the stage where we also report our results to Europe. We will just make national reports and they will be the same level of protection. If anything, there might be a slight opportunity to further improve better ways of doing things. That's the kind of thinking at the moment. And that's just bathing waters. I cannot talk about the economy because Anyway, just a couple of quick examples to amuse you. This summer, as I say, it's been interesting this year for me. Beaches, things happen. 84 of them. One of them, yeah, not a very nice beach, by the way, quite stony and rubbly. But yeah, someone discovered asbestos on the beach. Old asbestos tiles from a landfill dump that had obviously secreted onto the shoreline and been washed down. It was confirmed as asbestos, so we had to officially, of course, close the beach. Not that everybody bothers with a beach closure, of course. So, I was also rather sort of being used by the sort of personalities of the folks doing the asbestos inspection. They look as though they're out for a walk, just sort of. So I'm also going to talk about a beach issue this year that happened to me in St Andrews. You may have all heard of St Andrews. It's one of our, it's the home of golf. Small game that goes on. I believe sort of Europe had a bit of a game the other week. I'm not sure what the result was, but home of golf, St Andrews, a very iconic location in terms of tourism potential and just general awareness of Scotland PLC. We have two bathing beaches in St Andrews, basically on either side of the town. One of them just off the picture here. Oh, yeah, so St Andrews does get some famous personalities in the golfing world, and I really just wanted to put that up in a sort of, obviously because a certain person's passed on, but clearly the picture in the top right is actually just last year. So that's Arnold Palmer, aged 85, was it? Yeah, it started at 86, nice picture. But just to show that, you know, we do get the personalities visiting St Andrews. Oh, moving on. Gee, I don't know how that slipped in there. So this beach, St Andrews East Sands. East is the slightly smaller beach, but again, you can see the historical background, university town, very high profile, Friday at 4 o'clock, I took a phone call from one of the local beach managers who said, someone's dumping stuff on the beach, and I went, what? Yeah. Why would you do that to one of your iconic beaches? This was a dredging operation. Well, we found out within a few hours, but this bunch had been collecting dredging materials from the harbour and from a nearby small stream. And they were driving it just onto the beach at low tide and just bump, 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 bump. If it was just mud and sediment, that'd be bad enough. But if you look close, this was like rubble, broken bottles, tins, glass, etc., etc. So instantly, we all had to get into action, both ourselves as an environmental regulator, but also the local council. Well, this is the character. Yeah, I mean, why would you do that? He had a license to dredge and dispose of properly, but what an idiot! You know, they were just in front of them. Of course, in front of everyone. So back to my signs. What was I able to do? Basically, we have 2 of these electronic signs at St Andrews beaches. I was able to post, I was able to get the folks beside me to post pollution incident, avoid paddling and bathing, because the risk wasn't so much E. coli and bacteria, but obviously kids walking bare feet across the sand, etc., etc. So again, the usefulness of that networked electronic signage system really came into its fore. Anything else been happening to me this year? Well, what is it with US politicians and Scottish golf beaches? So your man has 2 golf courses. This one he bought just a couple of years ago and renamed it. I think you know who it was. And that has one of our 84 bathing beaches just beside it. And there's another bathing beach in the background there. That's in Aberdeenshire. That's the local supervisor looking after getting rid of the seagulls, trying to remove them from the. Fortunately, this one, the bathing water, the sand at the background, the water quality is in the excellent criteria. And the other golf course has got a good bathing beach criteria. I hope I never get to the situation like I've just been talking about at Nairn, where I've maybe to get involved in explaining why sites got poor water quality classification. Anyway, oh yes, for balance, for political balance, I just had to say that yes, of course, he's got his playing partner just now. I think we should remind them though that if they want to get to a number of something over 270, I believe, in terms of electoral counts, that's not actually a good score in golfing terms. It's supposed to be something around about 70 or anyway. But actually, it's not about them too. This story is about another example of a beach this summer. This is a beach in Ayrshire, actually not far away from Turnberry, Calum Castle. Small bathing beach beside it, again, one of the 84. It's 5 miles north of Turnberry. And the reason I've got that there, the US politicians, actually, this is the man, he had whole floor in this castle gifted to him by the British people after the Second World War, and he visited regularly and played golf. I've not been able to confirm whether that picture bottom right was actually President Eisenhower playing golf at Turnberry, but it's a fair chance because the castle he was staying at is just a mile. By the way, if you go on holiday, you can. It's now a National Trust building, and it does have a hotel attached. You can actually have a holiday. Richard, you were talking about coming across to the UK. That's the sort of standard you would expect to sort of have as your accommodation, I'm sure. So why have I brought this one out? Well, basically, this location had 2 results. It's normally an absolutely safe, excellent or good water quality location, and then bang, a massive result for E. coli, followed by a few days later another high result. Sent the troops out, went investigating. Of course, it recovered and has been good ever since. We never found out why 2 rogue results just popped into a normally excellent. Things happen. Not saying it was dog or seagull or bad luck or whatever, but sometimes we just get these rogue results and you never do find out, and you just keep you have to admit that sometimes we can never find out. So what are my take-home points? I think the balance of all the fun and games that goes on with working with people versus sound science and the environment. And basically, that is reality. We have something, we have understanding, and we've got something that we can explain, but we have to work with people and communities and all their foibles as well. So basically, work with it. That's what's going to happen. This sort of circle of life thing, the media, the politicians, the citizens themselves, and ourselves, we've all got to sort of like take it all on board and work with it. Sometimes negative publicity is actually quite a good thing. These two shocking newspaper articles that I had, do you know, at the end of the day, that really actually gives me support, because basically they're all saying, we need to be doing something. What are you doing about it? Do more. Good, thank you very much. I'll stay in my job for the next year anyway. So, but seriously, folks, sometimes negative messages are powerful tools that you use to actually get action. And the story I gave about Nairn, which to begin with was a shocking story for them, we've turned it around, and we now have a much better community engagement. And you do need to have leadership on that and bring that together and drive forward common sense solutions. But with local ownership, it's going to be a much more achievable beast. So finally, you'll all be pleased to know, Nairn Beach did also give me a surprise right at the very, very end of the summer. 15th of September, actually. So if all else was to fail, then you can take decisive action. And it turned out, this is a true story, that this beach, someone discovered unexploded ordnance, so just take the problem away, blow the beach. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so we have a few minutes for questions, and this was what, 15? Anybody forgot to look at the time? Oh, yeah, we got plenty of time. So Holly has a picture of us stomping out E. coli, but I like yours of just blowing it up. That works better. We'll just do that. So are there any questions for Calum while he's up here?
Good.
Or Beth?
The back, I've got two now. Well, sorry, Richard. Half of the back was first.
Do you coordinate your message about beach quality, water quality, with the lifeguards talking about the potential for dangerous currents and wave action?
So the question was about, is water quality messaging coordinated with beach safety as in lifeguard stuff? Really good question. Not at the moment, but it's very much a live question, because we have had, around the UK, there were 14 drownings all in the one weekend this year. Two in particular, two people to, it's the classic young kid, mother was in both. So yeah, beach safety and water quality conditions, we are thinking actively about, as a public service, should we be using these electronic beach signs to provide on the day warnings against conditions being a problem, etc., etc. The issue for us just now is who would take responsibility for actually covering the day's condition message. We're an environmental regulator, and our statutory role is to provide the water quality bathing day advisory based on water quality conditions. We don't have any role for public risk in terms of swimmer conditions, and finding the authority that would do that and can coordinate with it. So we are having discussions, we have had discussions with the Coast Guard group, again, most of it's based on very local circumstances, so it's quite difficult to actually get down to the detail of specifically on a day that you could say, keep away or danger today. But I'm kind of expecting that to come more and more into the thinking. But yeah, it's a good point.
Thank you.
Richard?
Oh, I just want to say I got a note from João Brando from Portugal. Wanted to know whether you were, this was at noon, but whether you were off. So he's been watching. Portugal's been watching.
Hi, Joe. So hopefully I've not offended him with my discussion about Brexit. No, we get on fine, so that's good. Okay, thanks folks, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
I'll just make a quick announcement. Thank you. That's great. Do you have anything? We're going to take a break. Bathrooms are in the back. Go outside. We're going to come back at 1:30 for harmful apple blooms.